So phase one trials are opportunities for physicians like myself to understand the safety and the feasibility of new medicines. For instance, in my hands, the safety and feasibility of infusing immune cells, in particular, immune cells that have been genetically modified in the laboratory to have greater anti-tumor effect or greater potency. We need to understand, can those medicines be made? That's a question of feasibility. And can those medicines go into a patient, and is it safe? But for patients, it has to be something more. It can't just be that I am going to participate in this investigational therapy. We also offer those patients hope. We can't promise on a phase one trial that it's going to work, but we say, look, in our hands and in our best experience, you might benefit from these types of therapies. Once those phase one data have been collected, once we understand what the limits really are of how many cells you can give and what kind of time span, what kind of dosing, then we go on to what's called a phase two trial. And these are really important studies because phase two trials are powered, that's a statistical term. In other words, they are set up so that we can answer questions of efficacy. Does the therapy work for a small number, a small subset of patients? And in the world of cancer, that's very important, and I mean particularly for the world of immune-based therapies, because the patients who come onto our trials have what's called orphan diseases. An orphan, just like the word you would use for like an orphan, like an orphanage, but this is a special term used by physicians to describe cancers, or indeed any disease that's relatively infrequent. And for instance, pediatric cancers are orphan diseases. Thank goodness, right? There are just not that many kids out there with cancer. But for those kids who obviously have cancer and their families, this is an incredibly important diagnosis. So to make strides in orphan diseases, often it falls to investigators like myself who practice in academic centers, but under a nonprofit structure to provide new therapies. And we provide those new therapies in these phase two trials. And these phase two trials allow us essentially to gauge a measure of success. Does it work for that particular patient, child or adult? And so these phase two trials are really the way that we can then go on and make a difference. And we can start saying this might change the standard of care.